feel any responsibility for the recent report by Forbes magazine in which Illinois is rated 50th? She puts in parentheses last. Rating on the health of state economies. And then she asks, she points out that questionable actions have consumed tax dollars, she's saying that yours have, as well as plenty of time in the Illinois General Assembly.
Look, I don't know the specifics of that report. Let me say, and this was written during the tenure of Governor Cahn. When I left office, we had a balanced budget. Now there's an $11 billion deficit. Never had a deficit that big before in Illinois history. $11 billion. Now, the way I balanced the budget was we increased spending for programs like healthcare, record amount in education, $8 billion in education, preschool, programs to help people, raise the minimum wage twice for working people. But the way we balanced it was, I reduced the size of government to 15,000 fewer state employees. We did early retirements, encouraging everybody to take an early retirement so we would be able to do more with less. Raised fees on some businesses that were paying lower fees relative to the surrounding states. And then I found there was a surplus of $3 billion in special purpose funds, still exist today, protected by special interest groups. We tapped in and fought every year to get money there to keep the budget in balance. It would be wrong. This is proof why Quinn is so wrong and want to raise taxes on people and small businesses. If the economy in Illinois is doing so poorly, the worst thing you could do now is raise taxes on people and on small businesses. And here's a fact you should know. 80% of the taxes businesses pay in Illinois are paid by small businesses that create most of the jobs. Your mom and dad's businesses, mom and pop stores, the little businesses that are the ones, the small manufacturing companies. The big corporations don't pay any taxes in Illinois. And with all due respect, you're paying the Chicago Tribune in 2004 buckets in state taxes because they have loopholes and they have accountants and all the rest. And so if Quinn wants to raise the income tax, he's not only hurting individuals, he's taking more money out of their pockets, meaning less money to buy goods and services for the businesses that will employ people, but he's also going to help hurt the small businesses. And we're 50. If he gets away with that, we'll be 75 when it comes to our state.
Okay. One last question. By the way, to clarify, I don't want to Chicago Tribune. That was a freelance piece.
I stand corrected.
Okay. Not that I wouldn't be proud to. I'm a full-time professor of job. That's my job. Okay. Both Cahn and I had questions about that, so I thought we'd finish with one last question from us, which is, what did you think made Burris qualified to be senator? And kind of looking back, are you embarrassed by his perceived incompetence, or do you think he's performed well, or how would you kind of rate your choice?
Yeah. Well, there were two levels. There was before the arrest and everything changed, and then after. Before, as I said, and I can't wait for the truth to come out, my first choice was Mike Madigan's daughter. And I put aside personal considerations because both of them were blocking progress for people. Lisa Madigan, my choice for senator, joined her father in a lawsuit that supported President Bush kicking 35,000 poor people out of health care. The media never covered these things. We fought them in court. I went around the legislature and helped those people get their health care back. Madigan has his lawyers bring a lawsuit by Republican interests to sue me, but the Madigan people drafted the suit. She joins it to hurt those poor people. They came to my campaign office on January 14, 2006. The Attorney General, Lisa Madigan, investigating me, and her father, the Democratic Speaker and Chairman of the party, asking me for about $396,000 in campaign funds that they wanted. She's investigating me. She's in my office. Part of an effort to get me to contribute that money. The question of the ethics of that, it's legal, but the question of the ethics. And I knew when I wouldn't give them the money, because they wanted it to use against Janulius, because they saw Alexei Janulius as someone who'd go ahead of her in politics. And so that was, I believe, the motivation. I might be wrong about that. In any event, I said no. I predicted, I read about this in my book, that they were going to block some of my programs once I got reelected. In spite of it, and there were a lot of other stories I could tell you about. In spite of it, my dilemma morally was, can I hold my nose? Do I love the people of Illinois enough where I can negotiate to make his daughter the senator? And I know his politics is all about himself, his power, and his family, not about the people. The guy has no principles except himself and his family, and so therefore, he's a practical guy. He'll make a practical deal with you. He'll stop blocking the jobs bill. He'll stop blocking the expansion of health care. He'll give me a written promise to protect your parents from higher taxes. And I might get some of those other things I talked about. I'll make a deal with his daughter. Now, we don't have a good relationship because negotiating, you want third parties involved so you can get it done. Rahm Emanuel was one of the key guys to make that deal happen. That's what I envisioned. That was my first choice. When I was stopped from doing that, the next morning after I directed my chief of staff to work out the tactics on that deal, everything changed. And then if you look at the record, you'll see that these Democratic lawmakers and Republicans said we ought to have a special election. Okay? And they were trying to force me to step aside and get paid, or saying I should resign, or threaten to impeach me, and all of that. Okay? What they also were doing was trying to pass a bill they claimed that would allow the people to elect the next senator. I said that's what ought to happen. There ought to be a special election. Let's vote. Let the people vote and pick who the next senator is. That was baloney. They had no intention of passing that because the Democrats, my fellow Democrats, were afraid a Republican might win. So when they saw that I wasn't going to quit, all the pressure and the threats and the carrot of 2 years of getting paid as governor, or 6 months as getting paid as governor, incapacitated for a while, all of that, when I rejected all of that, then I had an obligation constitutionally to protect Illinois, and I had to pick a senator. Well, the Lisa Madigan deal now is out because of all of this. Now I go to my first preference. In my heart, I always felt I should appoint an African-American to the United States Senate because two things. None, after Obama leaves the Senate, but 0 African-Americans in the most exclusive club in the world. I can justify not putting an African-American there if I can get jobs and health care. And by the way, $1 billion in that jobs bill would have been for the inner city and for low-income areas to redevelop. Okay, I can justify helping a lot more people by putting Lisa Madigan there. But once that deal fell apart, then I went back to my first instinct was, which I always wanted deep down, to pick an African-American. Considering all the options after all that happened, I felt Roland Burris, being 71 years old, the first African-American in Illinois history elected a statewide office, a man from a generation that actually blazed trails for Obama's election to president, a guy who was not allowed to go to African-American law schools and went to, I think, to Howard University or something, a historic figure in so many ways, an elder statesman, everybody liked him. I thought he was the right pick. And then the great irony, of course, is in the age of Obama, my fellow Democrats, and your Senator Dick Durbin and Harry Reid are keeping him out of the U.S. Senate like they were some segregationist governors in Mississippi and in Arkansas previously. Wouldn't let him in. Wouldn't let him in. And then when they saw that there was going to be some backlash, the party of opportunity was keeping out an African-American, they let him in. And interestingly enough, that evening, Dick Durbin, who was blocking him, hosted a reception for Roland Burris. So under the factors and considerations, I thought that was the best decision I could make. You don't like Burris? My friend, I got nothing but love in my heart for you.
On that note, thank you all for coming in.